I remember that day in every detail. Sunday. The coffee smelled like cinnamon. The apartment was slightly chilly, but we didn't turn the heat on. It felt cozier that way. She was sitting on the windowsill with a book. I was typing something on my laptop, and an instrumental track from her playlist was playing in the background. Peace, routine, everyday life. What we used to call happiness. She went to the bathroom, leaving her phone on the table. I wasn't in the habit of touching it, but the screen lit up. Once, then again, and again. All the messages were from one person, saved in her contacts as Natasha, work. But what I saw had nothing to do with the office or reports. I think about you even now, when she's next to me. There was something more that night. When will we meet again without the masks? My heart froze. Not from pain. First, confusion. Then came understanding. And only after that, emptiness. Not even anger. I stared at those words like it's someone else's story. Like in a movie where you already know the ending, but still hope the screenwriter will spare the characters. When she came back from the bathroom, I was already sitting in silence. She said something vague, domestic. I didn't answer, just picked up the phone, unlocked it, the password was still the same, and handed it to her. How do you explain this? I asked calmly, maybe too calmly. Her face changed instantly. First, confusion, then fear. Her eyes filled with tears even before she could say anything. She started, but didn't finish. And again, silence. I didn't shout, didn't break anything, didn't ask, who is he? It all felt unnecessary. Like asking the rain why it falls when you forgot your umbrella. How many times? I asked quietly. Just once, she replied. I swear. I didn't believe her. But not because I thought it was more. Because it didn't matter anymore. Once. 3 times. 10. She had been with someone else. While I was making her dinner, buying that silly sweet drink she liked, recording her laughter just to listen to when I felt sad. I got up, went to the kitchen, turned on the kettle, though I wasn't going to drink anything. I just wanted to hear some kind of sound. Anything, except her crying. She followed me, touched my shoulder. I pulled away. For the first time in 3 years, I physically distanced myself from her. And in that moment, something in us broke completely. I don't know why it happened, she whispered. It wasn't supposed to. I was lost. Lonely. You were always away filming, and So it's my fault. I smiled bitterly. No, never. It was my weakness. My stupidity. And it didn't mean anything. Really, those words were a knife. Because if it meant nothing, then why did it hurt so much? She stood with her head down. I didn't see a traitor in her, no. I saw someone who made a mistake. Someone who regretted it. But at the same time, I saw myself. And I didn't recognize the man I had become. Because I always thought I'd leave. That if it ever happened, I wouldn't forgive. I wouldn't stay. But now, I wasn't leaving. We sat in silence for a long time. Too long. Time seemed to stop. Then she sat on the floor at my feet, laid her head on my knees, and whispered, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm only asking don't leave me. And I sat there, didn't move, and didn't know what was scarier, her betrayal or my inability to walk away. We never spoke about it again. Not that evening. Not the next day. Not at all. She made me coffee, cooked breakfast, smiled as if nothing had happened. I accepted it in silence because I didn't know how else. Because something more vital than trust had broken inside me, the desire to ask questions. I didn't leave, and neither did she, but something between us did. We stayed together in an apartment that remembered our best days. But now, it had turned into a museum of silence. Every step echoed, as if disturbing the peace of a forgotten room. She was silent out of respect. I out of despair. I didn't know how to yell, but every move I made screamed pain. I didn't accuse her, but every glance was a silent reproach. And she felt it. I saw how she turned away when I entered the kitchen, how she stopped herself from touching me, how she paused, hoping I would break the silence first. One evening, we were walking home after a stroll. Just a simple walk, meaningless. We barely spoke, walked side by side but apart. I opened the door. She passed by me without a touch, without a look. Then she suddenly stopped. Are you better off without me? Her voice was quiet but clear. No drama, no tears. Just the truth. I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. I don't know, I said, but I'm sure it's not better with what's left between us. She looked down, then stepped toward me, and, for the first time in days, touched me. Not for warmth, not out of desire, but as if asking, Tell me I still have the right to be near you. I pretend you forgave me, she whispered. But I don't feel it. Because I'm not sure I can, I answered honestly. Then why are we still together? That was the question I asked myself every day. Why? Because I love her? But what does love mean when the heart counts its wounds? Because I'm afraid of being alone? But is it better to live with someone you can't touch without a memory flashing back? Because I hope it'll get easier? But every day, it only gets heavier. We stood there in the hallway like two strangers who had forgotten how their story began. Later that night, I lay on the bed, she next to me, her back turned. We didn't touch, didn't even breathe and sync like we used to. Then she quietly said, "If one morning I disappear, don't look for me. That will be my apology." I didn't know what to say, because how do you explain that your greatest fear isn't her leaving, but her staying and me never finding a way to forgive? Not her, myself, because each day I realized more and more. I might survive her betrayal, but I don't know how to live with the fact that I stayed after it. Night, her breathing beside me, steady calm, just like before. I lie facing her, but between us isn't just 1.5 meters. Between us lies betrayal, silence, shame, and the memory of how it all once began, and how it's now ending, though we haven't said it out loud yet. Her back is turned to me. She always sleeps like that when she wants to escape in her mind. I know these details better than I know myself. She thinks I don't notice how every time I try to touch her, she holds her breath, as if afraid I'll reach for a part of her that already belongs to someone else. I always wake up before she does. I sit silently on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Sometimes I put on music in my headphones to drown out the thoughts. They don't scream, they whisper, but that whisper cuts deep. She wakes up, turns toward me, smiles sleepily. I want to believe it's genuine, but I don't believe in anything anymore. "You didn't sleep?" she asks. I don't answer. I just go to the kitchen. While the water boils for coffee, I wonder if there's any point in continuing all this. It looks like a routine, like life, but inside, it's a performance. We're both playing roles, and exhaustion is our most devoted audience. She comes in, sits at the table, says nothing. Silence has become our new language. In it, we speak about everything: pain, shame, fear of losing, and fear of staying. "I had a dream," she says, staring into her cup, "that we went far away, somewhere no one knows us. And there, we were different. Without all this." I nod. In dreams, it's easy to be someone else. The problem is, we wake up. "I don't want you to suffer," she adds. "If this is eating you up, tell me. I'll leave." I look at her. For the first time in a long while, really look. "The problem isn't that you cheated," I say. "The problem is that I stayed. And every day since is a reminder that I betrayed myself." She lowers her eyes. "But I'm not holding you," I say. "You're free. You can go. But I also need to decide what to do next." Then she does something unexpected. She takes my hand. Firmly. Almost painfully. I know what I've lost. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I want to earn it. If it's not too late. I say nothing. Not because I don't know what to say, but because any word would be a lie. Neither yes nor no can capture what's happening inside me. The coffee is getting cold. Our hands are still intertwined. And in my mind, only one thought echoes. Maybe I did stay. But now, I need to find a way to return to myself. It was summer. One of those where the sun feels fake. It shines brightly, but offers no warmth. We continued living together. Had breakfast. Drank coffee. She did my laundry. I washed the dishes after dinner. Everything looked the same. And yet, completely different. We learned not to touch the pain. Like people living with open wounds, they know where it hurts, and they simply avoid it. Carefully, respectfully. But the biggest change was our silence. Before, silence was easy. Like a blanket on a rainy day. Like rest. Now it was something more. Dense. Delicate. Sometimes even warm. Silence became our agreement. Better this than tearing each other apart with words again. In the evenings, we'd sit on the balcony. She read. I smoked, though I'd quit a year ago. Just held the cigarette, unlit. It was my new habit, to have something in my hand when I didn't know what to hold in my heart. "How are you?" she asked softly. That was new. We hadn't asked that before. We were afraid of the answers. I inhaled empty smoke. "Steady," I said. "You?" She smiled, but her eyes didn't change. I think I'm finally starting to understand what I've always lacked. But only now, when I almost have everything. I looked at her, for the first time in a long while, not with pain, but with curiosity. What did she mean? What exactly? Honesty, she replied. With myself. With you. I always wanted to be accepted for who I am. But I never accepted myself. That's where everything else came from. And the worst part isn't even the cheating. Then what? That I didn't tell you. That you had to find out on your own. I said nothing. It was strange. I should have been glad she was remorseful. That she understood. But instead, it hurt again. Because in her words was a truth I'd avoided. She had the chance to be honest and didn't take it. And you? She asked quietly. Are you still here because you love me? Or because you can't leave? I shrugged. To be honest, I don't know. Every morning, I ask myself why I'm still here. And the answer keeps changing. Sometimes it's habit. Sometimes fear. Sometimes hope. And sometimes it's you. And the other times, it's who I was next to you. I'm still looking for that version of me. She lowered her head. The wind played with her hair. Her eyes shimmered, from emotion, or maybe just from the glow of the distant city. I can't turn back time, she said. But I can try to build something new every day. Without lies. Without masks. Without pretending to be stronger than I am. Just with you. If you still want that. I looked at her for a long time. And I realized she had changed. Not completely. Not suddenly. But in her voice, there was no trace of the woman who once lied. There was someone else. Someone who wanted to stay, even knowing she could be sent away at any moment. I don't know what tomorrow holds, I said. But today, I'm still here. And if we're both still here, maybe it's worth learning to be silent together. But honestly this time. She nodded. And we sat there, in a silence that no longer hurt. It just was. We started going out again. Not because it got easier, but because it became unbearable to sit alone with the silence echoing inside. Cafes, exhibitions, evenings with friends. I held her hand, and no one could have guessed that between our fingers still lay a story that wouldn't let go. Sometimes she looked at me, long, silently, as if searching for confirmation that I was really there, that it wasn't an illusion, that I wouldn't vanish suddenly like I could have that night when I found out. And I found myself getting used to things again, to her voice, to her footsteps, to the smell of coffee she now made again in the mornings. But alongside that habit lived another, one born after the betrayal. I started reading her, too closely, too deeply. Every message she received, I heard, even if I didn't ask. Every phone call she took in another room, I stored in my memory. I wasn't jealous anymore. I was analyzing, like an investigator, like a paranoid. Is it hard for you to trust now? She asked once. It's hard not to doubt, I replied. She nodded, without offense. For the first time, I saw something new in her eyes, not guilt, not fear, but understanding. That's okay, she said, and I accept that. But I don't accept myself like this, I answered. I don't want to be the one who checks and stays silent. I want to trust. I want to be strong. But for now, you're just someone who survived, she gently interrupted. Those were strange words. Simple, but they struck something in me. Yes, I survived, but not without losses. And the biggest one was my peace. One evening, we came back from her friend's birthday party. Everyone laughed, drank, took photos. We did too. And on the ride home, I looked through those photos on my phone, trying to understand how we looked from the outside. Are we happy again? I asked without looking up. She was silent for a long time. We're learning to be new, she finally said. Not happy, not unhappy, just different. And who are we becoming? Who we can be. The ones who didn't give up. That answer felt like truth. Raw, honest, painful. I looked at her. She looked tired, but strong. That strength wasn't in her posture. It lived in her eyes, which weren't looking at me, but into me. I want to believe you, I said. But more than that, I want to believe myself again. That I'm not making a mistake. That I stayed, not because I was weak, but because I saw something more important than betrayal. She squeezed my hand. I want you to believe too. And if I need to, I'll prove it to you every single day. We sat in the taxi, the night city passing by outside the windows. It was quiet, but this silence no longer frightened us. It had no cracks, only a fragile calm we were slowly rebuilding. And maybe the most valuable thing we'd preserved was the ability to stay close, even when we had both lost faith. In the world, in love, in ourselves. Autumn came quietly. No thunder, no storm. It just got colder. The leaves started to change color. And so did we. One morning, I woke up and saw her covering me with a blanket. It was a simple gesture, but somehow the most powerful. For the first time in a long while, she did something without words, without expectation, without apology. Just a familiar touch of care. Unforced, unscribed. And I realized something had shifted. She didn't ask if I had forgiven her. I didn't say that it still hurt. We simply started to notice each other again. In the details, in the silence, in morning glances, in late evening embraces. It wasn't a return to the past. It was something else, like rebuilding after a disaster. When the city will never be the same, but you still choose to live there. Sometimes I think, she said while making tea, that the betrayal wasn't the worst part. The worst was how we both lived before it. With habits instead of feelings. With silence instead of dialogue. I nodded. Me too. We'd fallen asleep. And only pain woke us up. Do you think it was inevitable? Maybe. But I still don't know if the price wasn't too high. She looked at me. And for the first time, she said the one thing I had waited to hear back in those early days. I don't want you to stay because you're afraid to leave. I want you to stay because you have a reason to. I looked at her, not as someone who betrayed me, but as a person, real, vulnerable, with her flaws, with her choices, and with her shadow that still lay between us. I'm staying, I said, because I see we're not hiding anymore. And honestly, you're closer to me now than when we were laughing and had no idea who we really were. She smiled. Maybe for the first time, we're not in love with the idea, but with each other. We stood in our small kitchen, sunlight falling across her face. I noticed a wrinkle by her eye I hadn't seen before, and it made her dearer to me than all her perfect features. And suddenly, I felt that I had forgiven a little. Not everything, not completely, but for the first time, not out of duty, but out of a sincere desire to live on, not in betrayal, but in truth. But one thing still remained, the hardest one of all, to forgive myself, for the silence, for the paranoia, for betraying my boundaries by staying, for holding her hand when everything inside me wanted to let go. And now that we were both breathing in the same space again, I began to rebuild not just trust in her, but trust in myself. We sat in the kitchen, without words, without plans, without the need to prove anything. She drank tea, I coffee. The morning chill drifted in through the window. We just were, side by side. After everything, I looked at her, not the one who had cheated, not even the one trying to make things right, but at the woman who stayed, and stayed with me. I forgave her, not in one day, and not completely, but I did forgive her. Myself, I didn't. Because how do you forgive yourself for crossing your own boundary and staying where you once promised you'd leave? How do you accept that you learned to stay silent when all you wanted was to scream? And yet, this woman taught me something new. That love isn't always about a perfect story. Sometimes, it's about the strength to stay, even when you feel empty inside. And then, to slowly fill that emptiness, day by day. We didn't become who we were. We didn't become someone new. We simply remained. And maybe, in that, lies the greatest forgiveness.